Hey, good morning, folks. Sorry for starting late. Had a bunch of stuff going on here, and gonna really just flip through a bunch of this as quickly as we can. Need to get back to some other things here. Uh, Interesting day yesterday. Not too surprising, I guess, given how extended we were on all the symmetrical extremes. Like I've said a few times, unfortunately, we will get back to doing some of the Substack and other posts. Just been super hectic and busy here the last little bit. So gonna go ahead and jump right in. Reminder always, we're not financial analyst advisors. Nothing we say or do should ever be taken as any kind of a buy or sell recommendation. And with that, we'll jump right into SVXY. Unbelievable how that thing is continuing to just rise and rise. No real end in sight. Basically unchanged from we grabbed a screenshot here this morning, and unchanged really from last night. Interesting to note here too, it's not wanting to get above this structure, can't even get a bar close above it on a 60-minute basis. This is super old time frame structure here, going back to, I can't remember, like 2018, 2017, something like that. So certainly really interesting on that front there. I should check one thing here to make sure like this is doing what I expect. Yeah, okay, cool. Above that, everything's pretty much basic and clean levels. Did add a couple things here. Full weekly photo ADRs, tier 1 daily cheat. So up there, and then below, full ADRs, tier 1 day cheat. You have the OPEX right there, so, but I would expect if we're going to do this, we're going to come all the way down and grab this. Potentially even go down and grab that gap fill from this gap up day there, between the 5th and the 6th. So, interesting to note there. Moving on, we'll head over to VIX. Noted really this one kind of delta here is for a possible div up there based upon what we decided to do today. Gapping up a little bit, about 20-30 cents give or take, but basically unchanged from where we grabbed the screenshot. You can see it's at 1404 is where it's at right this second. So excuse me. The other part to note is this lower end zone, weekly trend guide, reversal 1, tier 1 day cheat, is the ABC termination from this higher time frame ABCD pattern drawn out there. So pretty straightforward on VIX. Moving on to SPY. So added trend strength reference point, swing anchor VWAP. It came right up into this as we were doing prep, and is actually still hovering right around there. So it's right around this trend strength reference point. Swing anchor VWAP right there. Market is inside because that's the definition. Just above that, you have our combo point of control, supply and demand low, and outside of this one bar yesterday, like we haven't had a bar close above it for quite a while. So you got our little bit of poke above here. Ran right into the top edge of supply and demand. Structure obviously, hence supply and demand. Couldn't even get to and close out that gap fill. So super interesting on that one. Did add here this weekly pivot point, and then really the two things that going to be keeping an eye out is down here in this block. You really could just treat these as one bigger zone. It's set up for the look down here. You can see over here on the daily, right? It's also interesting to note too here, right? Like we popped just outside of this transfer trend line here from the October lows. Touch there, touch one time again, but touched a handful of times here on the upper side. So got all that, and don't really know there's a whole lot else to say here. It's pretty clean on SPY. So flipping over to, give me 1 second. Flipping over to the Qs real quick. So did a couple things, combined this upside stuff into one zone here. On the trend guide one, as I noted, pulled it up a little bit to grab the open and some of the this stuff in here. So that, like, bar opens and closes in through there. So pretty interesting to me, at least, is kind of where all this stuff is. Like, have that little bit of poke above, and then really can't get back above there. It keeps trying, and no dice. So in any event, the next zone really combined into one with weekly pivot, trend strength reference point, and everything else is pretty straightforward. Lost a couple swing anchor VWAPs, obviously through all this, but we ran right into that one yesterday, closed right on it. Tick for tick, the weekly photo ADR on the Qs, and did come in and tag that swing anchor VWAP like you just mentioned there. It's also the daily anchor VWAP there too on that one. You can see over here on the daily, right, and just came right into it and tagged it right there. So the other part to mention is down here at the low. So combined the combo low volume node, tier 2 data sheet, full ADRs, and then that monthly pivot and weekly trend guide 3 zone into one bigger. Gap fill in there, yeah, pretty straightforward. I don't know there's anything else here to really hit on with the Qs. It did pull back quite a decent bit there. This 20-day SE, this is calculating in real time, so I mean it's definitely continued at 349.21. So yeah, it's pulled back even from here down into 348.51. So especially as NQ is dropping down into session VWAP here as we speak. And then you going back over to ES. So it's your call. You could leave this swing anchor VWAP in there from June 1st at 9 a.m. I left it. We did get below, but we did recover off of it as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how we interact with it here this morning. My guess is it's likely going to get taken out as we go down and grab the trend guide and probably this weekly pivot zone here, with the bigger block down lower at this at the trend line and stuff, all the way down at that spot there. So in fact, I would probably even take this, looking at it here in hindsight, and take this zone down to be a wider zone, but take it here down to and include the weekly trend guide block. So it's up to you and how you want to think about that, but I think that's probably what I would do in respect. That's what I'll do on my charts here. Is I'm going to actually take that right this second while we are talking, and I'm going to drag that down to also pick up and include the weekly trend guide there. Underneath or between these kind of blocks here, we did add this one div, so you can see like there's some hesitancy back here on the 28th towards the end of May. Poke up, fail, got up through there with weekly IV stat high was there, and then finally just kind of took that out last week. But to me it was just some structure. It's also the photo ADRs and the tier 1 date sheet stuff there, so added that. On this one I didn't draw the zone all the way down to include swing anchor VWAP, because I expect no matter what we do today, that swing anchor VWAP is going to come up and join the zone here with the gap fill in there and the full ADRs and whatever else. So yep. And then I think the last one just to call out is all the way down here is drag this one's over to make it a zone with MPP. And then would call out here too, I noted this transfer trend line here on the daily. It's not as steep of a slope as what you saw before on SPY, where it started all the way back here. Kind of went up that way with, I think it was a touch probably here and here. I think this was probably a little bit cleaner of a transfer trend line. So that is ES. And Q, so I added a couple of zones here to call out at the super highs, which I doubt we get, candidly, but you never know. So weekly trend guide reversal 1, supply and demand. Underneath that you get full ADRs, yesterday's high, supply and demand, and combo high volume node in there. And obviously you've got some of the stuff in here, like was this going to be Thursday's IB high, Friday's IB high. So I mean, you definitely have some different structure stuff in here. Underneath you got trend guide. I accidentally deleted, but there's the combo point of control, as well as what May's highs were and the low edge of the supply and demand. Under, right, you get your weekly pivot, you get your tier 1 OPEX, tier 1 daily cheat, combo high volume node. So a decent number of things in here, as well as your photo ADR, assuming we don't keep pulling down here, but we still have a ways to go to really to move that photo ADR off of that spot. Trend strength, swing anchored VWAP, pretty clear, pretty straightforward on that. Top edge supply and demand. You can see kind of the interactions back here. Try to try to hold, and then just failed. Couldn't even get back up there. Same thing, slice right through, try to hold, come back and test, and then go. So I wouldn't be too surprised actually if we decided to come back up and maybe we test this here from below. Maybe even go as far up as tag that cheat in the weekly pivot and then fail back, but just have to watch. Under the block that we were testing with and are trying to decide if we're going to push through or not is the weekly trend guide and VPOC from yesterday. At the lower edge here, there's yesterday's gap. Meh. It's there. So, and I think that's really it. I don't know there's a whole lot else here I want to cover other than noting that the weekly trend guide 2 zone does include our 20-day EMA, but you can see the daily anchor VWAP is really kind of much lower, but it is closer to the lines up with the daily trend line here from the daily anchor VWAP. So that would be a pretty good sized move, but hey, yesterday we traded 370 points rounding up, so yeah. I skipped YM and RTY, just have other things going on, like I mentioned, so hit on CL and GC, and then we're going to call it. So CL pretty clean. We just added a couple things here. So weekly photo gap fill structure up here. This one we added a div with this week's ETH highs and the tier 2 daily cheat. Split this stuff out here. Have a decent little div right there at that block. Really, it's just the daily anchor VWAP is just a touch higher from the swing anchor VWAP, which we failed from already. Try to look and see where is crude right this second. Crude is coming up for the second time, and it looks like it wants to come in and try to test this zone here. Everything else is pretty straightforward. It is really just kind of lining up in into this daily anchor VWAP pinch there. From the look with 50-day and daily anchor VWAP from April 12th, and then the daily anchor VWAP from the lows on May 31st. So quite interesting pinch there. It is also interesting to note too that 30-week SMA is coming up here right too above that weekly photo gap fill structure stuff. So maybe we run into it actually today as well. We'll just have to see. Humana. I don't know that there's a whole lot else to touch on other than I guess this one added the full ADRs and weekly RTH low. So that block right there, if we decide to pull down, we're at $1.20, probably, yeah, it's still $1.20 on ADRs. So potential to come down here and tag that, just do a lower high and not even, just leave this gap fill open here right as is. Not even come down and tag this gap fill, combo high volume node, and tier 2 daily cheat with weekly photos just underneath that. Last up, GC, and then again we're going to call it here, folks, is added a couple of things on GC. It is still just flirting around with this 1960 zone. But did want to add a couple things up on the highs in case we do decide to get going. Because yesterday was a 30-point move. So up here above, we added the supply and demand weekly trend guide, tier 1 end of week, and the tier 3 daily cheat stuff there. There's also a combo high volume node in there. And you can see there's definitely some attempts to go in and tag it on a weekly IB stat high there last week. Underneath that, we added this one, full ADRs and yesterday's high, which you can see was a clear kind of rejection point yesterday. Didn't even want to get up any higher and just failed and just completely missed that. I don't know what we had. Yesterday was a pretty jammed day, actually. So Extended this block here, so 20-day EMA, 50-day EMA, trend guide, supply and demand, common point of control, structure, I mean, a whole bunch of stuff in through here, and I haven't really wanted to get above any of this stuff for the last little bit. We had our poke above, and then just continuing to, really, if you look, like we've been hanging out kind of in this area here. I'd have to put a volume profile in, but I mean, that's, again, kind of why I've got the combo point of control stuff there. So in any event, we added the weekly pivots tier 1 day cheat right there. Underneath that, trend strength reference point, swinging anchor VWAP, and a combo high volume node. And like I said, we ran up into that spot here overnight, tagged, and have been failing back. We're trying to hold session VWAP at the moment, but not tons of success there. In any event, underneath we had a structure gap fill. This would have been the weekly IB stat low here on this one in particular. Let's see what else. The rest of these zones are pretty all straightforward, other than adding structure down here with full ADRs. Again, traded 30 some points yesterday, so full ADRs down here. Structure and the full, it is just a little bit wider than it wants to carve up and build things, so we just expanded that and did it ourselves. And then similar down here, so this was a div, and we just expanded it open a bit more to include, to treat it as a zone and include weekly trend guide reversal 2 and monthly trend guide. And with that, folks, that is it for the day. As always, if you have any questions or comments, just go ahead and tag us in the chat there with about the approximate time that you've got your question. That way it'll give us context to know where to go back and look and see what you got going on. Again, any questions or whatever else. So hopefully everybody's having a great one, great week. Only one more day till Friday, and then it's nothing. I don't know what anybody does on the weekends. Oh yeah, we all look at charts because we're addicted to scanning the market. Anywho, we will catch you all later. Hope you have a great one, and see you tomorrow.